Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Ben, this is Books with Bengus Khan, and today I have for you my December reading wrap-up and January TBR, since I pretty much have a bunch of reads locked in. So, I am filming at night. I got a real box light, and that should help me be able to make more videos this year, which is cool. I won't be limited to just when I have free time during daylight hours. And I have a lot of reading to get to, so I want to run through it pretty quickly. So I started the month finishing out the Richard Sharpe series by Bernard Cornwell, although he might still be releasing books. He just released a new book in that series this past year, still might be going, so the series might not be over. But this was the 23rd and last book chronologically. I don't think there's going to be one after this, because this takes place in 1820 at near the end of Napoleon's life. And then I dipped into his little memoir, Sharpe's Story, which is just a kind of account of the origins of the Sharpe series and his thoughts about it, his thoughts about a lot of the books, and a little essay too about his early life, which is really harrowing stuff, growing up in an adoptive family with a very physically abusive parents. So really interesting sort of nonfiction memoir by Cornwell there, which shed light on the series. For mega fans, I think that was a really cool read. But it has lots of spoilers, so you really only can do that if you've read through the series. But this book was not a very good Sharpe book. So I learned in the memoir that he finished out the main arc of the series that he had started kind of right in the middle of the Napoleonic Wars in the Peninsular Campaign in Spain, and then he wrote that through Waterloo and the end of the war. And that was his plan for the series. But then TV came calling, and they wanted to produce the show, and in the early 90s they wanted him to start releasing more books as the show was going into production, and it eventually got made with Sean Bean, and I want to check that out. But he didn't have a lot of great ideas for continuing, and he wrote a couple of lackluster books right then at the behest of the TV people, including Sharpe's Battle, which I didn't realize at the time the circumstances of that, but that one was really not that great. And this one is Sharpe's Devil, where it starts out, actually Sharpe goes to the island of St. Helena, where Napoleon was in exile, and that was a great scene. But after that, Sharpe gets embroiled in the civil war that's going on in Chile, and the adventures and military stuff over there are just not very engaging. And I would, for I guess any completionist out there, you're going to be reading every Sharpe book, and it's fun to spend time with Sharpe, but for the chronological end of the series, man, it's just a shame that he wrote this one at all. Because Sharpe's Assassin, which he wrote a couple years ago and took place right after Waterloo, was just such a more poignant ending and finale for the whole series and for Sharpe as a character. And so I'd recommend just stopping there or throwing this one in somewhere along the way. Maybe if you can do a little pub order sometimes with this series here and there, just get it out of the way and don't save it for the very end. But I am curious to see what more Cornwell's going to do in this series. It is such fun, gritty, historical fiction, and just Rupert Farley's audio narration too is just so fun. And just I'm going to treasure kind of re-listening to these over the course of my life. Although probably never this one in particular. Went from a lackluster read there to one that I loved in Children of Ruin by Adrian Tchaikovsky. That is the sequel to Children of Time, book 2 in the Children of Time trilogy. So I loved this sequel. It was doing something a little bit different from Children of Time, so different kind of structure. This one used flashbacks. It is taking place in a different location. Don't want to give too much away, but there's very different things going on. Although it felt very coherent as a sequel, and a lot of it kind of followed up on a lot of the same themes that were explored. And this series for me is just very special. It's one that I am so engaged intellectually about the ideas that are being explored and the themes, but also easily attached to all the different characters that are involved, and the plotting is so suspenseful and interesting to me. I know a lot of people felt let down by this one, but Children of Time is so special. I think anything that would try to follow up that, I think would disappoint many people. So I didn't need it to live up to be the same exact kind of thrilling experience as Children of Time. But this went in a new direction that I really liked. And you know it's an author that is one of your favorites when a book that is not one of the general readership's favorites is still a huge hit with you, and that was the case with this one. Just again, no complaints, and I can't wait to see where this is going in the final book, Children of Memory. Then I moved on to Bold Ascension, which is book 2 in the Sunder Nation trilogy by Von Roycroft. So I really loved book 1, Severing Sun, earlier this year, and this book's doing something extremely different, and so different that it felt like I had lost some of the magic, and that was really helping me stay connected to the main characters and the storytelling. And I know this book has been working for a lot of fans of book 1, so this might have been just a personal thing for what I was more wanting out of this story with these characters, because there's a really awesome moment early on where the two characters are having this heart-to-heart discussion about one way their lives can go, and then of course they don't go down the just like peaceful kind of live out their lives in obscurity path, but more the following a prophecy, shake up the world kind of path. And this book can get pretty dark and harrowing in terms of some of the decisions the main characters make that I had been attached to and liking them, and now they're doing things that are challenging my connection with them. And I think for a lot of people that might really hit. And I am very curious to see where this goes, though, in the trilogy. Based on where it ended, I think the finale might be once again the kind of book that might really connect deeply with me. But very interesting, some new characters that I got attached to. I think Roycroft's amazing with child characters, feeling very distinctive and complex. And some of the side characters, too, away from the kind of central two, got really interesting and had me involved and engaged in seeing what was going on with them. And so there's still lots of things that were working. There were some pretty large time skips early on in this book, and kind of skipped over parts of these characters' lives that I think I was more interested in than where this book ended up focusing. And so, yeah, your mileage may vary on this exact story, and I've already seen it work really well for a lot of readers and fans of book 1. So, just not exactly to my taste, but that's okay. Still, I think, really high-quality writing, vivid characters, and an overall story that I'm still really excited to see where it goes in the finale soon. I then read this little story collection that Joe Abercrombie released this year called The Great Change and Other Lies. And 3 of these were companion stories to special editions he had released of the Age of Madness books, and then 1 was a new story for this collection. And man, I love this cover art that Sub Press did for this little volume. It feels great. And it was a blast being back with Abercrombie after a couple years of being away from the First Law books. Man, his writing is just so witty and clever and smart, and it just so hits for me. And I was reading this one, saw it in print because there's no audiobook for it, but I had always listened to the First Law audios with Stephen Pacey, but I've listened to so many hours of those that I was kind of able to imagine Stephen Pacey performing it in my mind as I was reading. So that livened things up for me a little bit when I kind of really tried to do that. But these stories felt very thematically linked, and it read really well as a whole collection and kind of not as just individual separate stories. But I think they really did add to the whole Age of Madness story and the First Law story on the whole, especially that last story, The Great Change. Just really cool for First Law mega fans and completionists. I think you're going to want to get your hands on this, either the physical copy if there's still copies, but definitely the ebook of it, so you can just complete everything that's written in the First Law world. I was doing some things that were in print, so I wanted something that I was planning to do audio only to go along with those, and so I reached for Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinneman, with the narrator who's gotten a lot of praise in Jeff Hayes, and I was immediately blown away by Jeff Hayes' narration. He is doing things that very few other narrators are doing, and with a lot of extra audio engineering too, to add some spice to the audio experience, but in a way that is so immersive. And Hayes, the way he's doing different voices, just fantastic. So he's killing it on the audio narration. So I couldn't imagine doing these books any other way. But I have never done any lit RPG before. I didn't know what it would be like. I don't really play RPG games, but I'm aware of kind of things that go along with those, like different stats with constitution, strength, and dexterity, and loot boxes, and I'm aware of how it works, but don't have much personal experience with it. And this ended up being a lot of fun because it doesn't focus too much on the stat aspect, but just enough so I think you kind of know what's going on with it. But instead it's focusing on just a wild roller coaster ride of a time for this main character, the main POV, which is Carl, who is kind of forced into the dungeon, which has been prepared by an alien race for many years, where they're just kind of forcing hundreds of thousands, or maybe starts with millions of people, just being forced into this kind of televised game show for more advanced races kind of out there in the galaxy. And Carl is going to the dungeon with his cat, Princess Donut, and Princess Donut kind of magically gets enhanced and becomes more sapient and verbal, and the cat character, Donut, is just so much fun, provides so much humor that is really working for me. And interestingly, I found a lot of similarities in the experience of this series to the Dresden Files, which is also kind of urban fantasy where it's kind of set from kind of our real world, current day, but then there's fantasy aspects that kind of get brought into it. I think the contemporary Earth setting allows for a lot of kind of pop culture references, just current event references, things that you can't really do in a secondary world fantasy that can really add to the humor and the jokes. And so that's a great kind of aspect of this, where there is a lot of fun, whether it's the things that the game AI says, which are just absolutely bonkers sometimes, or the crazy thing that Princess Donut's gonna do or say next, or some of the other crawlers. But Carl is a very serious and very emotional, and you start to learn more of his kind of traumatic past as the series goes in just these great little kind of flashback bits or memories that Carl's having from his past. But he is a very tense, dramatic kind of character around which everything turns. And it's dark and gritty, and there's all sorts of just harrowing action scenes that are going on, where Carl's life, Donut's life's at stake, other people they become friends with. But Carl, at the heart, is an extremely kind of moral person who is trying to survive, but also takes helping others very seriously. And a real joy of the series is watching him go out of his way to help other crawlers, or even the non-human kind of NPC characters that were just generated for the dungeon. But he feels connected to them as well and wants to help them survive. And there's this tension between that desire to help others and for things he has to do also to just survive, which is really interesting. But Carl ends up helping a lot of other people, and then it's interesting to see the karma come back his way, and where other people end up being able to help him later on. I just love the way that Dinneman plots out the series in a really long-term way, where lots of details from early on come back around and matter later. And so I was just getting so hooked to this, where I just binged it, really. And I'm right now in the most recent release that is out, which is book 6. So I binged through all of them. I'll go through them just to give you a summary of how I felt. So book 1, Dungeon Crawler Carl, just getting thrown in with Carl and just not being prepared for this, and just getting the feel for how it's all working, what are the rules of this game. It was really wild, and it took me a while to just get my bearings along with Carl, but I liked it. Solid. I think I gave that one 4 stars. And then next it moved on to Carl's Doomsday scenario. So the book really slowed things down here. I love that each floor of the level of the dungeon is doing something very different. And in this particular level, just the non-stop kind of chaos of the previous levels was kind of ended, and there were more these quest storylines, and it wasn't working nearly as well for me. And just the exact nature of the quests and kind of the NPC characters Carl got involved with wasn't really doing it for me, and I felt kind of disengaged from a lot of the middle portion of this book, but he still ended it really strongly. And Dinneman is just amazing with these avalanche endings where so many strands are coming together. It's really tense, high stakes, just epic climactic sequences, and I love that. So that kind of rescued this second book for me, and I was kind of worrying that the series was kind of just meandering, going to a place I wasn't gonna really love, and maybe I wasn't gonna continue, but then the ending hooked me back in. I think I gave that one 3 stars, and that led into book 3, the Dungeon Anarchist Cookbook. So this went back to just the frenetic chaos of the earlier levels of the dungeon, and I liked that change back to that, but it was so complex, and I had a hard time just wrapping my mind around the layout of this level and understanding the strategies. I think Dinman could be better in terms of making things just a little less convoluted and easier for me to understand Carl's strategies and tactics, so I don't just feel like lots of random stuff is happening. But throughout this book, some really engaging things were going on, and another absolutely tremendous ending. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. So, I was enjoying myself. And then the next book, though, became the first 5-star read. That's book 4, The Gate of the Feral Gods. So this one had a fun theme of kind of land, earth, sea, air-based levels, and I don't want to give much away. You'll find out kind of how they have to make their way through this level, but I really liked the setup of it, the conflicts it introduced, and it wasn't overly convoluted. It was pretty simple and straightforward in terms of what they had to accomplish, and that allowed me to just kind of fully understand their approach and to have that tension around, will they be able to carry out their plans and succeed, and then when the plans go off the rails, kind of what they still have to do to win and get through. And so I really loved this particular book, and another great ending. And so this was where I just felt like, man, this series is kind of leveling up, like how a lot of people experience the Dresden Files, where it was like pretty good for them, and then they hit the middle of the series and changes like, oh, this is amazing. I kind of felt it was getting to that point where the stakes around the outside world building that you're learning about through every book are getting higher and higher. I love that it's kind of expanding the scope of the story just beyond the dungeon, and so that the stakes and scope of the story are expanding into real epic territory, getting really, really invested in the main characters and side characters. And so I don't want anything bad to happen to my core group, and Dinman is not afraid to have really dramatic things occur, so everything feels high stakes, intense, but there's always funny jokes and humor that lighten things along the way, which I really appreciate, and Hayes is just amazing in his delivery of the humor. And then I just finished this. I didn't finish it in December, but I'll include it here because I've finished it by the time I filmed, which is book 5, The Butcher's Masquerade. This went back to the quest format that I didn't love from before, but it focused less on it, and so that brought it back down just a little bit, but an absolutely tremendous ending, maybe my favorite of the series. And I thought that I was going to take a break to get some of my other reads that I have to do, but I just had to see what was going to happen, what the next level was going to be like, kind of what was the fallout going to be from the previous level. And so I had to fire up the audiobook for book 6, The Eye of the Bedlam Bride. And man, I don't know if I'm going to take a break from that at some point, or just kind of race through that and then be caught up to where Dinman is and then be waiting for the next release. But man, I am so engaged by this series in a way that really surprised me. Did not know how Lit RPG was going to go. And I am going to be curious, maybe try some others. But I have seen lots of comments around that this is pretty light on the actual Lit RPG elements. Doesn't focus nearly as much on stats and things. That is really characteristic of Lit RPG. So this might be a great first entry into that subgenre for people. Definitely was for me, and I'm having a blast with it, especially the audios. So that is what's been consuming my reading life for the last couple weeks. And then as far as my January TBR, so I'll be continuing to make my way through that audio, and then starting a series I've been so interested in for a couple years. That is The Forgetting Moon, Book 1 of the 5 Warrior Angels by Brian Lee Durfee. So I'll be in a buddy read along with Josh at Red Fury Books and a bunch of other people. But I'm so excited to get to this one. It's a chunker, and all 3 books are chunkers, and I love that, just diving in. And so I can't wait for figuring out what is going on with this author who I'm very familiar with from his YouTube channel and really love watching his reviews. So curious, though, to see what his writing is like. Then I'll be continuing on in the Rainwild Chronicles with City of Dragons by Robin Hobb. I should be having a live chat with Colin at Colin's Corner about the first 2 books, the Rainwild Chronicles, probably on Sunday morning. So look out for that if you're interested. And I can't wait to continue that series soon. And I might be involved in another buddy read. So this is just a buddy read filled month with Warbreaker, along with Laura at Fantasy Awash and a few others. So this is a beautiful Dragonsteel special edition, and I have a kind of resolution that if I get a deluxe special edition, that I really want to make use of it and read from it and have the illustrations, the color art kind of enhance my experience, and don't just get these to look pretty on the shelf. So have not done a reread of Warbreaker since I read it back in 2018. So I'm really interested to see now what that experience is like after seeing some of these characters, in the future from where these events all took place. So very curious about that. Oh man, for Book of the Month, that's tough. Really could go with Children of Ruin, but I think I'm going to give it to The Gate of the Feral Gods, because this last few weeks I think is just really dominated by Dungeon Crawler Carl. And yeah, I gave Children of Time my Book of the Month last month. So show a little love to a new author, and I am so excited to see where this series goes and how everything ends up, because it is so nuts. So that was my December, and what's coming up for me soon. Let me know what you've been reading last few weeks, what's been a big hit for you or not in some cases, and see if you're excited about anything that I'm reading as well. Love to hear it, and I'll catch you later.